This podcast is brought to you by the Fireteam Whiskey Fitness app. Everything you need to get fit and lose weight right at the touch of your fingertips on your phone. You can play hundreds of workout videos on our app. You have fully customizable fitness and nutrition plans, work out anywhere, anytime on your schedule, and no gym equipment required. Sync your Apple Watch, your Fitbit, and your MyFitnessPal to the Fireteam Whiskey app and track everything in one place. You can text one of the Fireteam Whiskey military fitness trainers at any time to get tips, tricks, helpful hints, and just some motivation for your workout nutrition routine. Go to fireteamwhiskey.com and sign up for the Fireteam Whiskey app now.
The ideas, procedures, and suggestions contained within this podcast are not intended as a substitute for consulting with a medical professional. All matters regarding your health and fitness require medical consultation and supervision. Welcome to the Warrior Wellness Podcast, a podcast for military members, veterans, and first responders focusing on fitness, health, nutrition, and biohacking. Our mission with this podcast is to introduce America's heroes to lifestyle habits and hacks that will help them live healthier, happier lives, and in turn, be fit enough to continue their support of their communities and country.
Well, thank you, Ashley Garbolja Maldonado, for joining me on the Warrior Wellness Podcast. And you're a fellow podcaster, so you know the deal. So we're going to get down and dirty. I just want to introduce you as of course, a military veteran, and we'll get more into that here in a second. Founder and CEO of Guide On, the military community, and she's also a Legion podcast, the American Legion podcast co-host, and she is also the VHA communications specialist. So amongst a million other things. The reason why I have her on specifically is because she is an amazing women veteran advocate. So so I stalk Ashley on LinkedIn because she posts amazing things every single day. She's keeping women veterans issues on mind in the forefront on social media platforms. And I learn something all the time from her posts. So we're going to get into some of those women veterans issues as well here pretty soon. But Ashley, I just wanted you to talk first about your background in the military.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me on, Stephanie. It's a pleasure. My journey in the military, let's see. I just got out in 2019, November, after an 8-year career with the Ohio Army National Guard. I was military police sergeant. It's pretty high speed. They fast tracked me, 3 years. I'm a sergeant. Next thing I know, I'm gonna hit my 6-year mark. I'm an inline staff sergeant, and I'm doing all of these amazing missions and educating and training soldiers from not just my company, but across the battalion in many capacities, just from my dual, if you will, employment while I was working in higher education made me very much so an asset to other folks trying to understand their benefits, in addition to all the things that I was doing as a military police sergeant. So my career started about 2011, 2012-ish timeframe. Joined the service to alleviate some financial burden off my family due to recession. I had younger brothers. I wanted to make sure that I myself could provide for myself and not have to worry about who was going to pay for my education or how I was going to get the next leg up. I believe that education is, there is no expiration date, and you just continue to learn. But societal standards say you need a degree, right? So I had to really scratch my head and think about what was going to be in my best interest. So the National Guard was an easy fit. I did a lot of research. I needed to stay local and close to home for my family. And the next thing I knew, I'm raising my right hand. I find myself, trying to, pursue ROTC. It doesn't work out. I have a falling out, with the program. I unfortunately become, a statistic of military sexual trauma. I'm kind of pushed into military police as like a last resort. There were only a few options at the state for anyone who knows how the National Guard works. There could be 12 openings, there could be 2 openings. It just depends on the need of the state. So I kind of found my, my footing, if you will, in military police. It was between, I believe, that engineer and an asphalt layer. So naturally, I went for an MP. So with that being said, I had a really great career. I took part in some, Homeland Security response missions, quick reactionary force, worked on, cruiser weapon systems to, basic MP tasks to anything under the sun. I've always told people military police, MP stands for multi-purpose. And we, from landscaping to janitorial to admin to logistics to running a range to riot control to cruiser weapons. Like I said, there's just so many things that I was able to do and make a outstanding impact in both my community and on my soldiers during my time in service.
Awesome. Yeah. So thank you for your service, and of course my fellow Army woman as well. So cool.
Cool.
So now moving forward, I mean, you're done with your military career. Most of us just kind of, do the adult thing. We go get jobs and we, get married, if whether or not you have kids or not, and you kind of move on with your life, right? So, most veterans, I would say, don't really get involved with advocacy or, with veteran community, and especially women. How did you stumble into getting into women, being a women veterans advocate? And I'm saying this not as a joke, but it really is very rare. Even the fact that I have two hats. I have two women Army veteran hats, and I never see, almost never, other than the women in my women Army veteran group, I never see women wearing, kind of their military pride and their military paraphernalia and their, military veteran gear. And you see every man wears theirs, see men always wearing their military hats. So it's just a rare thing for a woman coming out of the service to kind of get involved in the veteran community. So how did you end up doing that?
Great question. So the way I would describe this is accidental advocacy. I kind of fell into it. It was one of those, due to my early on experiences being told, hey, it's your fault, or this happened because of this, or X, Y, and Z, sometimes being one of the only women at the training, meetings, or I found my voice very quickly, because I've realized that, I could speak as loud as possible, say my opinion. If they don't listen, that's their own fault. But if I don't say anything, that's on me. And as I kind of dabbled in this, like, I'm young, right? I'm like 19, 20. I'm a 20-year-old sergeant trying to figure it out, trying to figure me out. And I find that, like, I'm really taking a niche to taking care of, my fellow sisters in arms while I'm in the service, and really being their advocate, because there aren't usually many women NCOs. I mean, it kind of grew as my career progressed. I saw more women in NCO positions, or non-commissioned officer sergeant positions, as I got a little bit more time in. So for like my 6th, 7th year mark, they were more frequent, but early on they were scarce. I had maybe like one woman who was a staff sergeant in my, in my company that had a military police, MOS, who had been deployed, to having like onesie twosies that were sergeants. And that was it. So when I became a sergeant, I told myself, like, I need to be the person that I needed, right? So that's how it kind of started in the service. But what I tell folks too is, while you're in the National Guard, it's a unique situation where you are in like this constant state of transition. So you have like one foot in, you're going on the weekends, you're doing your 2 weeks, and again, like, that's expanded and changed so much dramatically over the years that it's no longer just 2 days on the weekend and, 2 weeks in the summer. It doesn't work like that anymore. Especially as you go up in leadership, it's just you're on call all the time. So with that being said, I digress. I am, part-time soldier. I am finding my way in the world, going to school, figuring out what I want to do with myself. And I stumble into a military service center, community college, just wanted to ask a question. And next thing I know, I walked out of there and they had offered me a part-time job because I knew so much about benefits and resources. So I started working at a community college in Cleveland where I was working with dependents, with spouses, with transitioning veterans from all service branches, whether they got out after 20 years, 8 years, 4 years, service connect disability. I saw it all. So they would all come to me for advice, and I'd have to help them, with career paths, to, coursework, to really self exploration. And I found myself like advocating, doing more, doing all these projects and being connected in the Northeast Ohio community to the local VA, to our vet centers, to our county service offices for veterans, to the federal building downtown for veterans, to the state program, you name it. Next thing I know, I'm like in this huge network of nonprofits in the area that are trying to help. So I just become really well connected, and I'm making again these connections. I'm kind of reeling them in. I'm drawing some focus. I'm helping people. So that was kind of my first step. So the next thing I know, I'm in the service, 1 foot in, one foot, in uniform, 1 foot in the community college space, and then I find myself kind of being leaped into the university space, where then I became a VA work study. So then I was finding again all of these resources, all of these things. And it was always my women who I just had such a hard time finding, or when I did find them, they were like, "Oh my God, you're a unicorn." Like, whoa, help me. And there was just so much relatability there. So we worked really hard at the university level to create like a Legion Post, a Student Veterans of America chapter, really this community where everyone could be represented, especially addressing like women veteran issues and like how we can help those folks be more visible on campus and really embracing their service after they take the uniform off. Because I think the more physical obvious indicators for a man are like his haircut, or he might be wearing like 9 Line apparel or something where he's got veteran, or he's got, some shirt, like one of the tan t-shirts, and they do all the fun logos and stuff for duty uniform stuff, like you'll see those folks. But for, I think a lot of women who like get out of uniform and, they've just changed obviously like the hair, makeup, and like some other policies, right? So like now women can look a bit more like, their idea of feminine in uniform, where that really didn't exist a whole lot. So what I found, at least conversations that I had with women while I was in the college space transition, is that like they were like, "Oh no, like you see my nails, they're beautiful." Like, or I'm like redoing my hair, I'm trying a new style, or like I'm wearing makeup, or like I'm dressing feminine, or like I'm wearing things that wouldn't necessarily like cue me in as like, oh, I'm veteran, right?
But let me interject real quick here and hit. This is one of my biggest pet peeves, and the thing that pisses me off almost the most about this whole women's veterans issue thing. It doesn't matter if you wear the gear, if you're a woman.
Yeah.
You will still be asked 99 times out of 100, "Oh, did your husband serve in the Army? Is that why you're wearing that
all the
hat?"
time. Happens to me.
I want to.
Women veterans
I
advocate.
want to be very violent. I wear the gear. It says woman veteran, and you're still asking me if my husband.
I could wear my American Legion hat, and they'd still be like, "Oh, are you in the auxiliary?" I'm like, "No, I'm the veteran, guys."
Even if we're screaming it out loud, people don't see it. It's just that filter, the social filter just exists in this world, just prevents people
that's what
from
I saw on
that.
college campuses. So like what was interesting is like when I would have conversations with like higher ups, these decision makers, those are the kind of things they're like, "Oh, well, like we don't know." And I was like, "Well, you don't have to like wear something specific to be a veteran. I think there's just, you have to have the natural assumption until otherwise told by that individual that they're not a veteran." And they were like, "Whoa, mind blown," right?
Right.
And so this accidental advocacy comes from all of these different things I'm involved with in this time and space while I'm in the service. I had found out about the Women's Military Memorial. I was a recipient of the U.S. Army Women's Legacy Scholarship. There were just all these things like I was getting involved with, and finding that there were only a few very centric women veteran nonprofits out there. even, the Center for Women Veterans at the VA too, like, they weren't getting enough attention either. And it was just so fascinating too, because like, I just want to help folks understand our narratives. And I want to encourage women to be loud and be proud. I found too that, some women get out and they're just like, you know what, maybe I had a rough time in the service, or, some stuff happened. I've got some trauma there. I don't want to relive it. I don't want to be a part of it. You know what I mean? So everyone has like their reasons,
Mm-hmm.
but I think sharing our stories is incredibly important, both being authentic and vulnerable in that way, and telling people like you're a veteran, right? I know too many times Veterans Day, my husband, again, physical indicator, he's got this high and tight haircut, he's, he looks very macho chismo. It's kind of ridiculous, but people extend his hand, and it's to the point where now my husband's like, yeah, we might want to thank my wife. She served longer and she actually recruited me. So yeah, you might want to shake her hand too. And, and I usually interject and go, oh, thank you. Yes, we both had such a pleasure serving, right? Like, I find that some of the women that I have worked with, they're like, oh, I never thought of really do. I go, no, like tell them, like you correct them very, tactfully. Like, yeah, thank you. No, we enjoyed serving so much.
Right.
Or, finding a way to like weave it into the next sentence, right? Like, oh yeah, when I was military police and my husband was infantry, yeah. We had some good times, bad times, but here we are, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for recognizing us. So
And
it's
I,
all
I
about how
think
we
that
phrase.
comes down to, women are taught, of course, that, there's this societal pressure and the way that we're raised as girls is to be non-confrontational and, to not speak up and, oh, okay, well, it's not a big deal, right? To kind of sweep it under the rug. And um, it's sad because it's almost like we were taught the exact opposite as military members, right? I mean, we were told to be loud, we were told to be strong, we were told to, be authoritative, especially as you go up in rank, right? So, but that overriding societal expectation of our gender, keeps us from being an advocate for ourselves as women and for each other as women veterans. So, women who are listening to this podcast right now, just encourage you. And I know Ashley would say the same thing as to, I mean, speak up. That's the first step in being an advocate for yourself and other women veterans is you have to say something. It is a big deal because every time it is ignored, it's just being added to, that societal stigma that we have of, not being recognized and not being acknowledged. And yes, it is a big deal when I'm in a line at Starbucks and the man in front of me on Veterans Day is asked by the barista, oh, are you a veteran? You get free coffee today. And then when it came to me, she just asked me what I wanted.
Mm.
And I have to interject, is it a big deal? No, it's a freaking cup of coffee, right? But it is a big deal, for me to say, hey, how come you didn't ask me if I'm a veteran? Guess what? I am, yes, it's confrontation. It's uncomfortable, but we have to be uncomfortable to make sure that, that we kind of shake off this societal stigma that's been placed upon us. It's not our fault, but we've got to fight, unfortunately, for it. So let's talk about women veterans issues other than not getting your free damn cup of coffee on Veterans Day. So I recently saw someone post under one of your posts and it infuriated me, and you're much more nice than I am. Veterans are veterans, veterans are veterans. We all should just be acknowledged equally, right?
I know what post you're referring to.
Yeah. We shouldn't get a special month or a special day for women's veterans. We're all veterans.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about that one issue right now. What do you think about that?
So the post you're referring to for the listeners out there is June 12th is Women Veterans Day. It is not necessarily a national observance, but it is something that states have made proclamations for to take an opportunity to thank and celebrate women who are both trailblazers, who are, living their second service in our communities, who may have otherwise served and never got that recognition. It is not to replace Veterans Day. It is merely a day to commemorate the signing of a 1948 Integration Act, if you will, that allowed women to serve in the capacity they do today. So, this act, it's only a few decades old. Like folks think, oh yeah, women, it's like, no, like progress is like, if you really look at the timeline here, you got to take a step back and put it in perspective, right? So like, I always have to take a deep breath. I'm like, oh boy. But I do, I get those kind of responses, and it's like, I don't necessarily always engage, and maybe I'll message them on the back end, because I know that when folks usually respond like that, it's kind of like this defensive post. I typically like to see where they're coming from to gain a perspective, because typically what happens is they do know a woman veteran, and they served with a woman, or their mom or sister or somebody, right? And they don't really necessarily have the base connection or the root of why this act was so important and why this day is set aside to really recognize the contributions, right? So March is Women History Month, so we do women's military history. We have the 12th, where we really take an opportunity where states can hold panels and have these conversations and allow women to share their stories that otherwise may be, kind of overlooked on Veterans Day. Yes, as a veteran, I'll go out with my male peers, my fellow sisters in arms, and we'll go get, brunch, or we'll do whatever. And we can do that on Veterans Day, and we all recognize it. We can correct the waiter, waitress, the hostess, or whoever. But on the 12th, it is about the women who have come before us, and also inspiring the women who will be next to lead. So when I see responses like that, I try to educate, and I try to kind of understand their perspective, because if I just I know sometimes I have some folks who kind of will go they'll go right at it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone's got a different approach. But, when folks like that, they're coming from a place where they acknowledge our presence, but they also don't understand the history or the significance behind that day. And they just kind of make blanketed statements like that.
Right.
So it's important to educate and, connect them to resources. We're hey, if you're really interested in this, and I appreciate you being an advocate, veterans are veterans, you're right. We all are veterans, but here's why this day is important. And that's those kind of conversations you have to have, and choose which ones you want to engage and not engage with. Cause it's
right.
There are some folk, there are some men and women who you're never going to change their minds. Right. And you can only control how you react.
And it's about education, because, so this is why we have to have, Asian Awareness Month and Black History Month and, Women's History Month. It's not because we're trying to cram culture down people's throats. It's because there is just kind of a general unawareness and lack of education about these specific groups, right? And they all have a specific niche within our American culture and contributions, and should be recognized, because unfortunately, our society and our history and what we learn in school growing up and about, all of these issues is mainly about what the white men did, so we need to kind of correct for, a lack of education, in our modern day educational system. I know it's getting better now, but certainly when I was growing up, I didn't learn about any of this stuff, so it is about, and I learned so much joining my Women's Army Corps group. Gosh, I've learned more about women in the military and the history of the military and the contributions that women have made just by being a part of that group. And, I'm a woman veteran, and I didn't even have this stuff. So everybody, that's why this kind of having a special month isn't about excluding a group of people. It's about just kind of correcting for the lack of information, the lack of education, the lack of awareness. And then maybe if we did have a Women's Veterans Month, maybe less often in the future veterans of, wearing their hats, and they won't get asked that damn question about, oh, did your husband serve? as frequently. That's just what we're hoping for. But let's talk about other women's veterans issues. I mean, there's probably a laundry list that you could come up with of what we could kind of tick off. But, one of them definitely is access to benefits, access to care, access to, the benefits that we've earned as veterans.
So I would say when it comes to benefits and accessibility, I really do believe that the VA is really making incredible strides in these areas. Is it always as fast as we'd like? No. I will say that, kind of having, my foot in the door and working with the VA, there are a lot of opportunities out there for research to your service offices. And again, it depends on regionally where you are, but for accessibility purposes, there are resources, and I would encourage folks to check out va.gov's women's health. Look at all the services that are provided to you, and enroll, have these conversations with your physicians. One of the things that I've also encouraged folks, and again, like, I know there's folks out there who are like, well, I've got this claim and like I'm waiting and waiting. I've got a claim out there too, and I'm waiting and waiting, right? So one of the things that I've always encouraged folks is to work with an American Legion or VFW or other folks, like specifically for claims. That way that they can help you go through all of the important documentation, make sure that you have the resources that you need, because they're going to understand, the law and the way that everything is broken down from disability claim, because there's a lot that I didn't even know, and I had worked there, right? So I've always encouraged folks to check out these liaisons that are here to help you. As a proud Legionnaire, I went through the Legion, and they were able to help immensely. They were doing paperwork and things that I had no knowledge or concept of, and they were like, oh, well, here's this case and this case to verify that, yes, you do have the Service Connect, and here's the case that also supports why this should be increased. You gotta think about the pure size of the VA and like how quickly it takes, folks to get resources, equipment, to, personnel, to, changing facilities, right? To like having a clinic where you can walk in and, have your privacy, right, as a woman veteran, instead of having to go through the front gate, or, whatever the case may be. Those things don't happen overnight. And I tell folks, be patient, but be persistent.
Yeah. And that's another common complaint is, mainly males are going to the VA, and they refer you to, maybe support groups, and they're all male, and, there's just kind of a general kind of, male dominated, focus on, treatment and people just even being in the facility. So, what I know that there's been some pilot programs with, kind of creating smaller centers for women's. There was one in Jacksonville right near where my fire team whiskey office was. So I know in the bigger cities, they're trying to, make efforts to provide more women-centric services.
It's tough. It is a tough thing to do. And I think, like I said, patience and persistence. Squeaky wheel gets the oil. The right folks that are in the right positions now that are hard charging these issues. So from like maternity care to, like I said, military sexual trauma, applying for VA healthcare, apply.
Yeah. And we had kind of talked previously leading up to this interview that we definitely wanted to cover women veterans wellness issues. So can you speak a little bit about that, about women veteran and their struggles with wellness?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a whole health perspective, I mean, how do I put this? So like when you go to the doctor and say something happens, right? Like you're treating all the symptoms, you're treating what could be the overall diagnosis. I think sometimes when we step back and we take a look at the whole person concept, right? Like emotional, mental health, your physical health. Sometimes when we go to the doctor, they're just kind of looking at the physical components, like, oh, you have chest pain, oh, you have a broken leg, right? Mental health has, in many cases, been incredibly well advocated for. There are nonprofits out there, the veteran service organizations or military service organizations. You've got like Wounded Warrior Project, you've got Legion, you've got the VA and its overall concept with, June is, PTSD Awareness Month or PTS. You've got mental health resources. I know the VA, we've even got like apps too, which is pretty cool. Like PTSD coach, wellness coach apps, which is neat because it's nice to have a reminder to like take care of yourself, right? So in addition, you got like this spiritual, like a lot of people kind of neglect that piece, right? Like the emotional piece, like how am I feeling and why am I feeling this way? And that, wraps into your mental health. And then again, this whole health concept is so important. So, when we're looking at, primary care, we're looking at, specialty care. So for example, like reproductive care to rehabilitation, homebound or long-term care, to military sexual trauma, to mental health, evaluation assistance on issues, and then, just general care for your health evaluation or counseling or disease prevention, right? You've got nutritional counseling, weight control, smoke cessation, and, substance abuse counseling and treatment for gender-specific primary care. Specific cancers for women, right? Cervical cancer, making sure you're getting your pap smear, to breast cancer screenings, mammograms, birth control, preconception counseling, menopause support, right? And hormone replacement therapy, stuff of that nature. Like, there are all of those services and those things that are out there. But from a wellness standpoint, I think, and I could overgeneralize here, but I think as women and maybe some of the gender societal expectations that have been placed is that we're always kind of taking care of other people. Like I felt kind of that way sometimes in the service too. Like I was always taking care of my soldiers, right? Like I was the last one to eat, I'm the last one to sleep. I'm always doing something for the betterment of others. And I myself have had my own trial and tribulation with burnout and suicidal ideation and anxiety and depression. Like, these things are all real. And when we talk about them, more folks can realize that, like, wow, other people feel like this too. So like, when you look at the whole person concept, like, now we can start piecing together like a web or a puzzle or, connect the dots, whatever you want to say. I'm a very visual person, but for me, when I found, that I hit my rock bottom ended up turning into a trampoline because I had the support of, say, for example, the American Legion or the VA, my spouse, my family, right? So then you've got all of these accessory or extended supports, making sure that you have those. So when we talk about wellness, it is a whole person concept. And I know the VA has their own version of whole health concept, and they've been expanding that. I know that, for example, the American Legion, like, they're doing 100 miles for hope right now, which is, getting folks active, especially like pre-COVID. And then, my work even with Guidon, it's like, how do we educate folks? How do we communicate effectively that it's okay to be vulnerable? It's okay to not be okay, Folks will ask you if you're okay, but they don't ask you if you're happy.
Right. And again, that goes back to the societal expectation for women, it's, how are you? I'm good. Everything has to be good. We have to just put a smile on our face and trudge through, because nobody likes a woman that complains, right? Or is negative, or, says that things are wrong, right? So again, it's about speaking out. It's about speaking up. Not only are you going to be helping yourself, but you're making it okay for other women to speak up and for them to say, no, I'm not okay. I have PTS. I went through military sexual trauma. Quite frankly, my experience in the military was a pile of dog shit, and it damaged me tremendously. And it's scary for me to ask for help from the very system that harmed me, right? So that's the other issue here. A huge barrier in the way for veterans is, why would I go back? Like, I'm a kicked dog here, right? I'm extremely damaged. And now I've got to be reminded of that damage and that experience or that trauma every time I reach out and go to the VA or go to get help or go get some sort of, military assistance for these damages. And, it's just, I think from my experience and, working with veterans and mental health, it is that kick dog syndrome. It's like, I just don't even want to do it. I don't even want to get help because I'm just so traumatized by the military. I'm just associating getting help from them again with, how harmed I am. And it's just not even worth it at this point. So, but there are so many wonderful resources out there and support systems. And I mean, I'm on a bunch of military, women veterans support groups on Facebook. I guess the bottom line is, get plugged into a community, somewhere where you feel supported. If it's just women, or maybe a Facebook group, or your local American Legion or the Women Army Corps groups, just something. Even if, you are feeling like you don't want to reach out because it was the thing that harmed you, you may be surprised at, A, you're not alone. You're definitely not alone. And, B, this might be a helpful way to kind of transition into your healing path. And, your fellow military veterans, military providers, the VA could be a part of that.
Exactly. And it's one step at a time. It's you don't have to do everything in one lump sum. I tell people all the time, like, it took a lot for me to just go to an MSD coordinator, to have to like dig out some of that paperwork, to re-look at that. Like, it definitely opened some wounds, but it being able to sit down with somebody who understood, to then have some auxiliary kind of support, if you will, that meant the world to me and continued to help me. And having just some of those conversations. And I will say too, being really vulnerable is tough. It can be very tricky, because it's like, we don't want people to judge, but we also, like, it hurts inside, right? So what I have found is that the more that I've shared it, whether it's just a few phrases or words, or just saying that, I've had, anxiety, depression. I still suffer from anxiety, depression. I work through it every day. It didn't happen overnight. Like, 2020 was my worst year. Like, it felt like everything had just wasn't the year I needed, or, wasn't the year I wanted, but it was the year I needed, kind of thing. It's just, you never know, like, when you put out in the world, like with your story, you don't know if that's going to end up turning into a page for someone else's survival guide. You never know. And I think that's been part of my motivation, is, even throughout my career, through education, even now, it's like, I still get folks who tell me, no, you can't do things. And, I always rephrase and say, I can, I will, watch me. Because, I was told, or I felt like in the military, like I was invincible, and like I was built up to be strong and, aggressive, and all of these things, right? Leadership 101. And it's weird how everything's kind of transpired over the last few years, but I've really found my voice in the women veteran space, advocating for women, sharing content that resonates and educates.
Are you fire team ready? Try the Fire Team Whiskey Spec Ops Keto Joe Shake. The Keto Joe Shake is a medium-chain triglyceride MCT shake derived from non-GMO coconut oil. It contains 17 grams of MCT, 10 grams of high-quality whey protein, and no sugar. It's sweetened with stevia leaf, so you can keep those carbs low and shred that body fat. 25 milligrams of caffeine to give you extra energy for the gym or your busy day. Fireteam Whiskey has been supplying military members deployed all over the world with Spec Ops shakes for over 3 years. Fireteam Whiskey Spec Ops shakes are fueling the fight. Whether you are just trying to lose a few pounds or trying to get that extra edge in the gym, the Fireteam Whiskey Spec Ops shakes are for you. Make sure to stock up now and support our efforts to raise funds for Team RWB, our nonprofit partner that provides social support and fitness events for our nation's heroes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love how you said that. It's you never know when you speak out and when you speak up, whether it be about your own experiences or in advocacy for other women veterans or just in general for women veterans. You never know how that could be taken as inspiration for someone else who's watching. And there's a perfect example of this actually. I had long gotten out. I was working in a huge military mental health contract. I was traveling all over the nation. We provided mental health services to the National Guard. And I was visiting an on-site visit a unit and, talking with these, uniformed military people and working in medical. And one of the lieutenants, I met her and we shook hands and we kind of looked at it, and she really looked at me and cocked her head and said, Lincoln, right? I said, yeah. And yes, ma'am. And she said, oh my God, you were one of the TAC officers when I went through OCS. And I said, oh, okay. Well, gosh, I've seen hundreds of soldiers. I wouldn't be able to remember her specifically, but she said, I have to tell you something. It's crazy that I just ran into you. She said, I was one of the girls who you defended, and I basically filed a complaint. It went up. It was a big blow up. I definitely, got some lashback for that because a couple of the TAC officers had this group of 4 or 5 girls, women in uniform, do a skit. And in this skit, they had tied up their t-shirts, were showing their bellies, and had their hair in pigtails and were doing sexual provocative things in this skit. And I walked in on this and flipped out. And it was somebody who outranked me by 2 ranks. And I filed a complaint, and I basically was told that I was blowing it out of proportion. It was stupid. I shouldn't even have said anything. It was harmless, blah, 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 all the things that you get. So, but me being me, I got to open my big mouth, and get the trouble, but I've got to say something. If I see it, I say it. So she was one of those candidates, and she said, yeah, at the time I thought it was stupid, why would it be a big complaint? She said, now I just want to thank you. I know how much shit you got for saying something and how you basically got punished for it, but thank you for doing that, because it wasn't appropriate. I was a victim. This was absolutely completely sexualizing me as a soldier. It was completely inappropriate. Now looking back, it was a traumatic experience. And I want to thank you for standing up for us and all the lashback that you got. And she said, I've taken that memory and gone forward with that in considering, the female soldiers under my watch.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how many times I had to, stand up for. I had, several soldiers who, were postpartum, they were, they're breastfeeding. I couldn't tell you how many times, I'd have to advocate. I'm like, like, you got to let this individual breastfeed. Like, they have to pump, like, they have to do this. Like, this is like biological, right? I'm just like, you have a wife. Like, when you have children, like, how are you this disconnected? Like, just because she's a lower rank doesn't mean, like, you know what I mean? It makes her any less human. And like, this is like, it would blow my mind. Right. So there were times I'd have to advocate for, those types of situations. I remember there was a specific incident where there was just alcohol run rampant, and I was that person who said something, and yeah, I got a lot of slack for it, but you know what? No one got in their vehicles intoxicated, right? Definitely went up to a high level. They ended up doing an entire like resurvey. A lot of people, the hammers were brought down on some of the behavior and things that were allowed to just go unchecked. And I know what it's like to be in that position. It's tough, but you know what? it has to be done. And I couldn't tell you how many times I've been in a lot of those situations.
I'm
Right?
sure,
It's
as
like,
any woman veteran could say, I could
what?
recall many, many, many. Yeah. And, and it's about standing up, and it's about speaking up, and, having the bravery. And even if it's, you're going to get some negative, feedback, or, even punishment for it. It is about, that's the struggle, is we have to look out for the future generation, like that lieutenant, the future leaders of women, in the military, to stand up in that moment, and lead the way, and lead that path for them to have a better time of things in the future. And, and it's not, most of the time it's not malicious. The last unit I was in was all male. I was the only female. And, so, but my nickname was the voice of reason. And it wasn't it was kind of a backhanded compliment, but they were grateful for, and my commander told me this, grateful for my influence, because, a group of guys has groupthink, and they have a groupthink of a very different kind. And sometimes the voice of reason needs to come in, even if it's a female voice, and you say, hey, you know what, you might want to think about this, and it's just, and sometimes they're grateful for it. They're like, yeah, you know what, having them do a skit and put belly shirt on is probably not a good idea. So, so let's talk about your work with the American Legion podcast.
Yeah. Oh goodness. So love the Legion. I know that, there are folks out there listening to like Legion, like the American Legion, like the post that maybe down the road where my grandfather goes, or my grandma goes, right? Not this Legion. Like, the Legion is growing. It's very progressive. There's posts all over the country, and I had a rare opportunity while I was young to really see a lot of Legion in my community, and just be naturally involved with things. And so it became very synonymous that when I joined the service, that I would become a Legion member. So I think like the second year I was officially in, I had actually joined a Legion post. So many were just like, what? Like, you've been a Legion member for, 8 years, 9 years now, or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, wow, it's really been that long. It's the entire length of my career. So having the Legion as a support network, they've just been so good to me. I found myself being asked in college, I'm running these higher ed programs. So like, hey, we want to start an American Legion post on campus to be able to, step into a leadership role, join and unite, American Legion posts from all over, the county, to raising dollars for scholarships, giving opportunities that otherwise may have not been there for our veterans at the college and the university. It was a great thing. And the next thing I know, I'm applying for an internship in Washington, D.C. And at this point in my Legion career, I had been covered enough, because I'm like this, again, unicorn. I'm, 20, 21. I've got a commander's hat on, and I'm leading the hard charge and how to connect with college-age veterans in transition, and how we can use this as a catalyst to, bring folks in and create family, centric programming. They loved it. They were like, oh my gosh, this is everything we need. So I applied for this internship. American Legion, in less than 24 hours, called the internship place and were like, we want her. Like, we want her. Like, and I couldn't believe it. They had never seen anything quite like it. And I ended up interning with the Education and Employment Division. So I worked on federal tuition assistance and National Guard and Reserve issues and communications, and how, as a Legion, some of our resolutions of communication, for example, leading into the 100th year celebration. So having an opportunity to look and review all those, prepare briefings for the, commanders, inaugural, I wouldn't say inaugural, but it's a pretty big deal for the commanders. They get to go and address Congress on veteran issues. To be a part of stuff like that is very cool. So naturally, the American Legion podcast, American Legion reaches out to me and they go, hey, Ash, we've been wanted this podcast, and we couldn't think of anybody better. You've got lots of stuff to say. You don't have a problem saying stuff. We think you'd be incredibly inspirational. We definitely have a woman's voice on this podcast. And I go, Oh, that's so cool. Okay. All right. Let's do it. So, Jeff Daly and Mark Seavey are my co-hosts. Our episodes drop at like 9:30 every Tuesday. We do a combination of interviews and also military topics. So, we'll go to military.com. We'll find all of these kind of fun and fluffy stories to keep you connected during your transition. And then bringing in folks who have, different opinions, to unique stories, to here's the nonprofit I run or founded, right? There's just so many opportunities to bring folks together, listen, and we're all really lighthearted and fun. Just having, the two other guys. Like I am the voice of reason in that situation. I am usually the one where they make fun of me. They're like, "You're a nerd. Why are you?" And I'm like, "Because this is who I am." I said, "I'm going to ask these questions. I'm going to read a few more sentences. I'm going to read it verbatim because I want people to know the facts." And they're like, "You're so extra, G." I know. But the podcast is great. We're on season 2. We're still hard charging. We're recording more episodes. We're more content out there. Each of our so we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple iTunes, all the above. So, I always encourage folks to check us out, subscribe, rate us, leave us a comment. For some reason, like all of the comments right now are like my microphone switching out. Like we've got some really devoted people that love my tech. And I'm like, I just give compliments to my husband because he's all up in that and he loves it. So it is what it is. But yeah, the podcast is great. We're really excited. We were at first, like when they asked, it was going right into, it was like, February 2019, and this is before like the whole world went into like lockdown. And I just remember, like, I won't lie, like some of those podcast shows that we would do, like that was like my extension to
Yeah, it was probably perfect timing for you guys to kind of be out there, as a voice. And what I was really impressed with, I didn't even know American Legion had a podcast. So now I've got to get caught up on your episodes. But I was very impressed that, of course, that they have a female voice on the panel there. And it's, when you think about the American Legion, you think about old white men talking about their time in Nam, and it's kind of like not very inclusive. I know that's changing, and they're doing a good job, and being much more progressive and being more inclusive. So I am excited to get caught up on the episodes and listen to all the future episodes, and hopefully maybe even apply to be on, so we can discuss some, especially the crisis that is the military veterans' health and fitness issues that I'm passionate about. But speaking of health and fitness, talk about 100 Miles for Hope.
So 100 Miles for Hope this is our second go around. So we did this last year in efforts to get folks kind of moving. Everyone was just, either binge watching some TV. A lot of our posts who rely on, seeing each other in person, they just didn't have this connection. So the 100 Miles for Hope expanded to 2021, and basically you register through, it's called Kilter app. So you register and you join, like pretty much creating an activity log. And so you download the app, you go to the events tab, you select 100 Miles for Hope, you complete the profile, you connect your devices. So say you have, I don't know, there's so many different fitness watches out there. So finding the right device, connecting that device, and then kind of participating in, the different wellness activities. So for example, like at least an hour and a half, and you accumulate points, and you can complete up to 3 wellness activities each day, and they count towards your total. So for example, there are more than 40 different activities to choose from, right? So for some of us who have bad knees, like myself from the service, I'm not out there running hardcore every day. I'm on my bike, biking 24 miles like a crazy woman without any suntan lotion. I just did that recently. I'm not super proud. I learned some things about myself. But, if like that activity isn't represented in the app, you can create a manual activity so it counts, and you can receive bonus points, which is pretty cool. So what happens is, so you're doing all of these activities and you're accumulating these points, and you not only can, get your commemorative 100-mile for Hope merchandise or t-shirt, hat, etc., right? But anything that you purchase and the funds raised through your point accumulation goes towards the Veterans and Children's Foundation. So, for example, those individual donations will go towards, I'm trying to think, because we just renamed and we grouped the charities together. But just think about all of the veteran programming that American Legion does. And a lot of people don't realize, we do a lot. So from Americanism to baseball to scholarships to Boy State, Girl State, there's just so many things. And I encourage folks who don't know a whole lot about the American Legion to go to the American Legion's website and check out all the programs, check out the media. You can get all the podcast information there. And you can sign up for 100 Miles for Hope, and you can, continue to, fundraise for initiatives that, you care about. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit about it. It's pretty cool. I'll have to double check. You can also share your journey. We've been sharing and engaging with the community through social media. We've got some freelance, both photographers and writers who are kind of collectively gathering these groups, if you will.
Yeah, great. And so that's a fantastic incentive. I mean, not only are you, moving your body more, which is fantastic, you're earning points, you're getting prizes, and you're also raising money for charity. So that military and family affiliated charities. So that's amazing. So.
And it is open to anyone. So it's not just for American Legion family members. So for example, if you're part of a veterans organization, so Team Red, White, and Blue, Student Veterans of America, the Mission Continues, Team Rubicon, and others, to youth and family programs. So it's girls clubs, boys and girls clubs, Special Olympics, YMCA,
Oh, wow.
sports teams, and then
Great.
nonprofit specializing in health. So American Red Cross, American Heart Association, and I think the last one is Alzheimer's Association.
Okay.
We've got sample press releases, promotional posters. There's instructions on how to, use the Kilter app, and we've got a tutorial video. I know I needed a little help at first because I was so many apps. What are
Right.
we doing? But yeah, you can buy some cool gear. We've got FAQs. But all of that's going back to charities and giving right back to the community. So it's a great initiative, and I encourage folks to check it out.
Yeah, we'll include that definitely on the show notes. I've already got that all set up to go. So, and I will include all the links to the American Legion and to all the other things that you do and your LinkedIn page that I stalk you on. So is there anything else that you want to put out there or mention before we close out?
In the sake of women veteran advocacy, I just encourage, allyship. We've got a lot of brothers in arms out there, and we need your help. We need your help, right? If we're going to continue to raise awareness on women veteran issues, we also have to have our counterparts on board. We can't do it by ourselves, and to have, our allies who honestly, I probably would not have been the soldier or the sergeant I was without some of my male peers. And I think when we can get through to having all of those folks as self-aware as to some of our issues, that's when we're really going to hit the nail on the head, and we're going to make a big wave, a big movement. And for all my women vets out there, continue to be loud and proud and challenge people with the I can, I will, watch me mantra, because you're all incredible. You're continuing to do something in capacity and second service. I can almost guarantee it. And that your story is important. And also to check out the Military Women's Memorial. They are doing some really great programming. They have there's opportunities for you to record and share your story for, generations to come, and legacy, and the more awareness and women that we have registered will continue to bolster and empower that voice, that combined voice, if you will, as a unique group. So that's mine.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for being on the Warrior Wellness Podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Warrior Wellness Podcast. Please take the time to subscribe or follow on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on, or if you watch the videos on our YouTube channel. Please go ahead and leave us a review or share one of our episodes with somebody you think would be interested in the topic. We want to reach more veterans, military spouses, and military members with our health, wellness, and biohacking podcast. So please do your part and let other people know about our podcast. You can follow us on any podcast platform. Just go ahead and search for the Warrior Wellness Podcast.